from our county, and if we can perfect a right to that, which is, again, part of one overall project, there may be an opportunity, it appears there's an opportunity there for us to wheel water from Lake Sonoma to Lake Mendocino that would be available to us.
Further council discussion or questions? Further public comment? Again, this was a discussion item. Even though it mentions possible action, I don't think we're ready for any significant action on either of these items. And so we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a discussion regarding the Ukiah Railroad Depot and Rehabilitation Project. And we will go to City Manager Chambers first, and then other staff.
Actually, we will direct this to Mr. Erickson, and we had some late-breaking information today that he'll talk to you about as he gives his presentation.
Actually, I'm going to have Deputy Director Rick Senor discuss this, so the ball passed further again. And so he has an update on where we are with this.
Mayor Baldwin and City Council Member Rick Senor, Deputy Director of Public Works for Engineering and Streets. Before you tonight, we have a staff report regarding discussion direction for the Ukiah Railroad Depot. And I'll just briefly go through this report, then I'll give you the late-breaking information. It's been kind of a long process, but initially back in 2001, the North Coast Railroad Authority applied for a transportation enhancement activities grant funding to MCOG to rehabilitate the railroad depot building. MCOG awarded a grant for this project, but they wanted the city of Ukiah to administer the project. And as a result, the city and the North Coast Railroad Authority entered into an agreement for the city to manage the project, and that's how we got involved in this. To date, the city's actually gone through a number of studies with Caltrans, got all the environmental document cleared and all the initial environmental studies completed. And we've gone to the point where we've actually hired an architectural consultant to prepare the bid package, the plans and specs for the project. The architect, so far, and they're based on the plans and specs they've got completed to date, have found that we're still, based on the funding we have, we're short of funding for the project, about $207,000 short. As this process is going on, the North Coast Railroad Authority had a meeting on January 22nd, and at that meeting they made a preliminary determination declaring the Ukiah Railroad Depot as surplus property, and they proposed a public hearing in this matter for April 8th. One of the things that we brought up was that if the Railroad Authority proceeds with this, the city would be seeking reimbursement of its expenditures to date for the project.
What?
Pardon me?
I couldn't understand the last phrase.
Oh, if the staff our city staff made the point at this meeting that if the railroad proceeds with declaring it surplus and proceeds with that action, that we would ask for reimbursement of all funding that we've expended to date. The other part of this too was that Caltrans staff was present, and they made the same comment that there was some initial Caltrans funding used for purchase of the property that may be required to be reimbursed by the railroad. We've identified a couple options for this project. First one being we would cancel all work on the project, seek full reimbursement from the MCRA for our expenditures to date. A second option would be to seek additional funding from the Ukiah Redevelopment Agency to proceed with the project with a contingency that if the NCRA declares a depot as surplus, then the city would work out any legal issues to make sure that we retain the Caltrans funding for the project. The information that we got today, just this morning, came by email from our city attorney. He had an email that he forwarded from the NCRA attorney, Chris Neary, and I'll just read part of Chris Neary's email to Dave Rapport. He says, Although the agreement may have expired by its terms in 2003, I do not anticipate that there will be any recommendation considered by the Board of Directors of NCRA in April or at any time thereafter which would either sell, encumber, or declare the depot surplus. NCRA staff will recommend, and we expect the Board of Directors will be receptive to either renew the agreement or otherwise protect the depot property. So that's kind of is news after the staff report was written. And the way this is presented by Chris Neary, the NCRA attorney, it sounds like they don't intend to declare it surplus.
Councilmember Rodden.
Well, does that make this whole agenda item moot?
No, we still need to have some discussion on how to
About how we
proceed
want it, if we want
because,
to save money for it?
yes.
Why would the, what do we plan to do with a project of at the level of $500,000?
Well, the whole concept of the project initially was to rehabilitate the building and to bring it back to usable condition.
I'm trying to imagine why that would cost $500,000.
Well, it's, for one thing, it's a building of historic nature, and the funding that we got from Caltrans for the project is specifically for rehabilitation of historic buildings, and we've got to follow the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation of historic buildings. So. And there's been a lot of vandalism, both visible on the outside and on the inside as well.
Further, Councilmember Crane.
We're still paying rent for land, railroad land off of Leslie Street. Is there any connection for the skate park? We've been paying monthly rent and will for how many years? Anybody remember?
No, I don't remember.
But it's
50 years.
quite a while. And it appears to be ground that we can't use for a skate park.
Are you sure we're paying it even without the
Well,
skate park being there?
I've not heard
40
that we've
years.
suspended payment.
40 years.
So,
To my knowledge, we have not suspended payment.
and it seems that part of the topic of what should happen at the depot relates to what should happen to that piece of land. Should we continue to pay money for it if we can't use it for the reason that we rented it? It's not just, do we want to see this building preserved or not, which is sort of where we are right now. It's, if we don't want the skate park piece anymore, could those funds be applied toward this rehabilitation? If so, should we?
And that was paid for out of the firehouse sale from the North State.
That's my recollection.
What is the status of that lease for the skateboard area?
It's a 20-year lease with an option for a 20-year renewal, and I think we're in year 3
And it's a
of the
minimal
lease.
payment?
It's $3,600 a year, $3,000 a month. I mean, $300 a month. And so what I will say is the reason why staff hasn't recommended releasing that lease at this time is because we haven't officially signed off on the low gap site for the skate park. We're very close to having that agreement done with the county, but until we actually have that lease in place and we file with our project officer with the state and get approval to move the site, it wouldn't be prudent to actually cancel that lease until the state authorized the move of the skate park from that site to the low gap site.
Councilmember Landis?
Well, along the lines of what Councilmember Crane mentioned, it seems like something else that's happening in the downtown area is the form-based zoning codification and sort of a plan about how we're going to be using area very near that, if not some of that area that's by the depot. And it seems to me that to spend further redevelopment monies right now on that project doesn't make sense to me until we know what we're doing in that area with that property.